everyone to this video in which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the solution that we have built together with our partners ServiceNow and Tanium to help organizations, among which are our clients, with a total solution to become more efficiently and effectively compliant with the Digital Operational Resilience Act. I think the discussion, the conversation shouldn't be about, I need to be compliant, what do I need to do? Because actually being compliant doesn't mean that you are resilient, that you are properly protected against cyber threats. So the conversation really should actually be about what's underneath there. Why is this regulation introduced? And again, that's about, the underlying threat landscape, ransomware attacks, phishing attacks, DDoS attacks, the ever-evolving threat landscape that are of big concern to not only the central security function, the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer and his security teams, but actually if you look at larger companies, ransomware attacks, of course, are top of mind of the C-suite as they should be. Top 5 concerns of a CISO, for instance, and that's I think what the conversation should be about. How are we going to make sure that we are evaluating all of the entire threats landscape and the risks that we are exposed to as an organization, and adequately allocate investments to mitigate those risks. Next to that, there is of course that risk aspect, but there is also the compliance risk aspect. So the government taking charge to force companies to invest more, do more about cyber resilience. If they are unable to demonstrate compliance with the DORA framework, then not only will there be a risk of a penalty of 1% of worldwide turnover or an X amount, but actually additionally, what I think is also a differentiator for this new regulation is that board members can be held personally liable. So if companies really fail to act, if they are considered to have been acting in a negligent way in regards to implementation of requirements of DORA, board members actually can face criminal penalties. So that's a big differentiator. So what are the requirements under DORA? Actually, it's we've listed here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets, but it's actually only the bottom 4. The first one, identification and protection of the IT landscape, is an implicit one. And we've added that one because we feel that actually it should be an explicit one, and it really forms the foundation of your information security management program. What we're saying here is identification and protection of the IT landscape. It all starts with having a complete and accurate view on the end-to-end IT asset landscape in the organization. What business applications do I have? How critical are they? What underlying infrastructure components is this application depending on? Or what third-party suppliers am I dependent on that are providing me with this SaaS application, for instance? What processes are these applications supporting? So, because if you don't understand this, if we don't have a clear and accurate view on that IT asset landscape and all the dependencies in between those IT assets, and also the dependencies that the business has upon the IT landscape, if we don't have that view, then how are we going to determine the risks that we're exposed to? Having blind spots in the view on the IT asset landscape can be considered an information security risk on itself, because what we can't see, we can't control. If you don't know what you have, then how do you manage it? How do you protect it? So basically what we call that is the configuration management database. The second one, of course, once we have that view, we can start to execute risk assessments upon that IT asset landscape, classifying, IT assets, applications, servers, etc., to determine to what degree do we need to apply additional, controls to reduce residual risk that is, let's say, arising from those IT assets. Of course, that incident response plan is an explicit chapter in DORA. Security testing, so frequent penetration testing has to be done and is mandatory and needs to be, we need to be able to demonstrate it to the regulator. And last but not least, of course, third-party risk management. So accountability doesn't stop anymore at the organization itself. As a financial institution under DORA, we are now required to be able to demonstrate that we are also evaluating the risks evolving from our supplier ecosystem, and to what degree those risks can basically also pose a risk for our own operations. So that's a very important one, that we need to have a thorough third-party risk management program in place. Now, if we look at the challenges that we see at our clients that are introduced by implementation of DORA, it's a generic, you could say, we see a generic problem statement, where information security management basically, to sum it up, is really about that central risk compliance security function having to have a clear view on the risk and compliance posture across the organizations, across all sorts of different teams and business units, etc. And the central security function can only achieve that by exchanging information about, for instance, the degree of implementation of controls, of the status of remediative actions, vulnerabilities detected in the landscape, exchanging information between the three lines of defense, or between, let's say, the business and IT, and that central security function that need to have a clear, a consolidated view on all of those dimensions of the risk compliance and security function. Now, and if as an organization, if we're relying on manual ways of working, if we're relying on emails, on Excel, on Word, not only will that introduce, challenges like longer lead time, so the central security function having to chase, going back having to chase people in the business constantly, taking more time in, for instance, remediative actions because there's no automation, no automated triggers, etc. And basically, the CISO and the security team constantly playing, let's say, the role of a fireman. So constantly having to manually chase people, running behind the facts, basically. And in addition to that, of course, it also increases risk because things will get lost. We don't really have a real-time accurate view on where we are in regards to improvement plans, remediative actions, etc. And in case of an audit, I myself have an audit background. 9 times out of 10 audit findings result from the fact that not that the organization isn't doing things, but more that things get lost. They are not properly documented or documented in a way that is untraceable. That also leads to a lot of frustration and potential compliance penalties. Today, significant manual effort in basically collecting data, storing it, aggregating it, and visualizing it, and eventually remediating it. So our solution. What do you need? So we have built an end-to-end solution on the ServiceNow platform, also where we are relying on Tanium. And ServiceNow, for the ones of you that are not aware, a lot of people still, when we talk to clients, consider ServiceNow as an IT ticketing tool, which it really is not. ServiceNow is actually much more than that. ServiceNow is a workflow platform, which means that solutions are offered out of the box, best of class solutions and workflows are offered to all basically disciplines in the business. So there are solutions, yes, for IT, but also for risk, compliance, security, for HR, for customer service management, for the whole supplier management side of things, with procurement management solutions, etc. And in the end, what the platform enables the organization to realize due to the fact that it's built on truly a single data model, one data architecture. It's not a collection of point solutions. ServiceNow is truly one platform, one technology, one data layer, and that enables the organization to establish end-to-end, let's say, process workflows by connecting teams and people across the whole organization. We can realize, great advances in maturity, in efficiency, and in taking away a lot of frustration, because we can truly connect the whole organization with end-to-end workflows. And of course, integrations to all sorts of other sources of data and known platforms. At the heart, we have core capabilities like the workflow engine with a lot of standard workflows, but also configurable ones. The configuration management database is, of course, super important also from an information security and cybersecurity standpoint. So a complete predefined data model to capture and administer the IT landscape. And of course, integrations to collaborative tools like Teams and Workplace, etc. Yes, as I said, ServiceNow offers out-of-the-box, best-of-class solutions towards a lot of different disciplines. And when we look at the requirements under the Digital Operational Resilience Act, we can actually map one-on-one the chapters under DORA to ServiceNow standard products. And this actually tries to summarize that mapping exercise. And you can see here that for all of those chapters, so ICT risk management, incident reporting, resilience testing, third-party risk, and also information and intelligence sharing, we can see standard products have been mapped. So really fully advanced and evolved products to basically support all the requirements under those different chapters in DORA. So we have capabilities like integrated risk management for your policy and control management. So your whole the control library, control repositories, but also performing risk assessments, the risk register, capabilities like BCM, business continuity management for managing your business impact analysis, runbook, so continuity and recovery runbook, exercises and crisis management. Of course, there is IT service management for the whole ITIL framework. That's actually what ServiceNow is very well known for and has been a market leader for the last, 15 years or something. Security operations for security incident response, reporting, but also vulnerability response. And of course, also third-party risk management, a complete solution to, for instance, facilitate the tiering and third-party risk assessment through a single, let's say, portal for the suppliers to, provide inputs into surveys and document requests. So you can really see that we can truly, let's say, consolidate all of the different workflows and the data into standard products. So on top of that great, our great platform, what we have done as a partner is to actually build a dashboard. It still says NIS2 DORA. This should be DORA. We also have one for NIS2, by the way, but it's a little typo over here. Please ignore that. But we have on top of the platform, ServiceNow comes with really great reporting capabilities. So there is a lot of standard reports available, but you can also configure those. And what we have done is build basically an end-to-end dashboard to manage, to monitor your DORA risk and compliance posture, on top, of course, of those standard products. So what I also always say is, a dashboard is just a dashboard. That's just a visualization of data. It's really about what's under the hood, of course. Similar like with, with an iPhone, for instance. You can have a really great screen with colors and everything. If the internet connection isn't working, if you can't get to the data, and if you don't have the connectivity, then it's a useless device. The same goes for the dashboard. I'm going to show you that, of course, but keep in mind that really, let's say, what is underneath, that's important, because there is a lot of, tooling providers out there that also have these kinds of capabilities, but it's really about what's under the hood. So how are we collecting that data? How are we ensuring that we are streamlining and really optimizing processes and collaborations between all these different disciplines, and collecting that data in a smart way, so that on top of that we have an automated reporting layer for the people that have that have a dependency on that. And in this case, that is the executive board, it's the internal control function, and in the end, it's also external stakeholders, so regulators, potentially shareholders, etc. And so, as I mentioned, we're working with out-of-the-box, best-of-class products like CMDB for the IT asset landscape, IT service management, SecOps, IRM, etc., etc. Really, those capabilities that really help you to streamline those kinds of workflows between all these different personas and stakeholders, on top of which we can then, within the same platform, we have a highly automated and real-time dashboard layer to report on all of those different dimensions. So here, I'm going to browse through this a little bit faster, but just to give you a few snapshots of, what does that look like in ServiceNow. So again, there are standard products for all of the different domains that we have touched upon. And if you want to know more about that, then please also reach out, and gladly we will take some time to run you through all of these individual products. So one, as I mentioned, ServiceNow, and from the beginning of the year, we've also started working with a new partner, Tanium, which we believe is a great complementary technology to ServiceNow, where Tanium, for instance, has highly advanced, evolved capabilities in doing endpoint management, so IT asset discovery. In ServiceNow, we basically consolidate all of that information with a standard integration. So basically, Tanium scans the network for all of the endpoints, detects, for instance, unpatched endpoints as well to, detect vulnerabilities in the IT assets. In ServiceNow, everything is basically consolidated, aggregated, where we can report and visualize across that landscape, where we also have things like owners listed to certain CIs. And from the ServiceNow, the actionable platform, then we can initiate remediative actions that are then orchestrated automatically by Tanium. So if there's a vulnerability, it's seen in ServiceNow. For instance, a change is triggered, an approval is given, after which then a message is sent back to Tanium where an actual patch is automatically deployed. So basically, your end-to-end chain is automated with the complementary strength of these two technologies. I'm going to browse through this one a little bit. I think the end goal, really is to streamline interactions between all of those domains relevant to information security in a single, let's say, platform architecture. Our DORA dashboard. So again, as mentioned, we have conducted a number of iterations on this dashboard. So in collaboration with different clients, but also with, for instance, our partner ServiceNow and Tanium, and the Connect to Trust Foundation, that is a EMEA-based organization that is connecting, CISOs and organizations to share information and knowledge about cybersecurity best practices. In collaboration with a lot of different stakeholders, we have done a number of iterations to come to this dashboard. And I think what's important to mention also is that the conclusion that we've come to is actually that a fully standardized dashboard for DORA is something that is probably not feasible, because depending on the specific industry or organization type, you will have different information needs, different focus areas under DORA. Having said that, I think that we've come to something that is nearly perfect. And of course, I think what's also important to mention is that the reports that you're seeing here, everything can be configured in ServiceNow. So also if you feel like you have input or questions, please come to us. Let's have a conversation, and then let's see to what degree we can tailor this for your specific needs, for instance. So it's all highly configurable. We can add reports, remove reports. But at least this gives you something to start with if you are basically at zero and don't know where to begin. So we've basically grouped under a number of tabs different visualizations of data, right? So we have an overall status, IT risk compliance, critical business functions and IT assets, IT operations, incident reporting, business continuity, people, ICT risk, third-party risk management, and ICT security. And there's a lot of information here, but I just want to give you at a glance a little bit of, what can we visualize? What kind of data do we have in the platform, in the solution? So for instance, at the top left here, we see a DORA compliance gauge, which basically tells us there's 156 controls under DORA currently operationalized towards different organizational domains. So those can be IT controls, third-party risk controls, anything related to DORA. And we see that we have 156 currently operationalized in the organization, of which, 28% or 43 controls. There's something wrong with that. And I can click on this and it will then direct me to a list view in which I can drill down basically to give me much more information even about these specific controls. I'm not going to do that right now, but just for your understanding, we can export such a list also. We can filter on it. Basically, it shows you the underlying data set. Then I also have my DORA compliance by control objective. So this actually shows a number of different authoritative sources, like among which is DORA, but there is also, for instance, framework like ISO 27001, PCI, COBIT. DORA is somewhere down the list, but for each framework, it's a generic model basically. We have compliant controls derived from that, non-compliant controls. So basically a compliance breakdown for the different frameworks that we currently have in scope, among which is DORA. Next to that, we also have the breakdown per organizational domain. The entities in ServiceNow can represent any organizational domain or unit. So that can be IT assets, it can also be departments or business units. So what we can see here is compliance breakdown. So degree of non-compliance for certain processes like online order management process or payments verification, but also CRM software. So this shows us basically a visualized breakdown of compliance data per domain in the organization. So as discussed, of course, the CMDB plays a very big role when it comes to information security. And here we can see things like critical business services, critical application services, certain assets with missing information, etc. ICT incident management, very important, of course. So what kind of P1 incidents, certain unauthorized changes, critical vulnerabilities, and much more. If I go to the next tab, I'm going to browse through this one a little bit faster. It's just to give you an understanding. Here some more gauges on DORA compliance. This basically shows us a percentage compliance for DORA policies mandated under DORA. So there is, of course, in the data model, we are able to build relations between different artifacts. So we have a DORA framework, DORA authoritative source, and we have internal remote access control standard, for instance, that is mapped to the respective DORA requirements that we can monitor on as well. Certain top risks that need to be mitigated, and again, breakdown for certain processes. Additionally, what's also, of course, from a risk management standpoint important is to, if we want to take a risk-based approach, then looking at, for instance, critical business functions first, And that comes back to that configuration management database model, or also, as we call it in ServiceNow, the common service data model, which is essentially CMDB plus service and department, etc. layers on top. So a fully service-aware CMDB, which brings us a model to really capture the entire organizational structure into a best practice data model and build relationships between all of those different artifacts or objects. And that allows us also then to report in a smart way on different services and assets, and deduct criticality, for instance, of certain IT assets based on the business processes that they are supportive to. Yeah, we have something about IT operations, so change management controls that have failed, unauthorized changes, and we can see here and there that certain reports are unable to show data, because in my demo setup not all of the reports are properly populated. Specific section about major incidents, of course, having a central platform for security, for IT to monitor and act upon immediately major incidents, where from a single digital cockpit not only the information about the outage is displayed, but we can also immediately take action by, for instance, looking at incidents, assigning new remediation tasks, etc., and monitoring the situation. That's of course super critical. So from a resiliency perspective, moving also to the business continuity section, also a single platform that connects not only IT and security, but also the business, to really ensure that we optimize the information exchange between all of those parties and can act with a great efficiency, is super important to be able to ensure continuity and to minimize the time needed to recover, which is something that is for instance also in such situations, the visualization shown here can be used for that as well. Then, of course, third-party risk management, as mentioned. Here are some basic visualizations again about, for instance, the third-party per risk rating. So by performing tiering assessments first, initially we'll do an internal assessment on criticality for us of a particular supplier. If, for instance, we're talking about an ERP supplier, well, that tends to have a bit of a higher criticality than a supplier of our coffee machines, which can be considered really important as well, but perhaps for the business less importance. Starting with a tiering assessment and then performing third-party risk assessments, whereby we're using all of the workflows and the intuitive portal technology for the supplier to interact with, to provide inputs into the surveys that we send out, provide input into document requests, and thereby really streamlining again information exchange between the organization and the supplier ecosystem. If we again do that in a manual way, then things get lost. We're unable to report on statuses of risk assessments, etc. And again, there we have out-of-the-box capabilities to fully streamline that whole life cycle, and then to also report on it. Finally, ICT security. So again, something about security incidents, but also, for instance, about vulnerabilities. So what we can also do with, for instance, Tanium, but also with other vulnerability scanning tools, there are standard integrations with, for instance, also Tenable and Qualys and Rapid7, whereby we are able to, with a standard interface, to absorb the data, the vulnerability data, and then automatically have that mapped to the correct CIs in ServiceNow. And I think the business challenge that we often see with vulnerability management is that if there's a bunch of different tools used, but those tools typically they're really powerful in scanning the landscape and into monitoring the situation, but perhaps the solution and the workflow to remediate on certain actions, we see challenges there. So then there's a huge backlog of vulnerabilities, but still then the security function is going to send out Excel sheets to the respective IT owners, which are often unknown in the vulnerability tools, which we have captured in ServiceNow in the CMDB. So automating really the remediation cycle for vulnerability response is something where ServiceNow is very, very strong from a complementary sense. We have all the solutions in place, but how do you get from A to Z? Because DORA, it encompasses quite a broad spectrum or a broad scope. So I think, first of all, taking a holistic approach is really, really important. We take a technology-first approach, adhering, let's say, tailoring your processes to the out-of-the-box processes in, ServiceNow for doing your risk assessments, your third-party risk assessments, your BIAs, etc. Instead of tailoring the technology to your process, let's use the standards. Let's try to standardize and let's move towards, let's adhere to that best practice. But in order to achieve that, what's really important is that we do have a clear understanding of how are you working today. How have you organized yourself? What roles and responsibilities have you identified and defined in the 3 lines of defense organization, for instance? What kind of processes are you following for your risk management, for your third-party risk? Also getting an understanding of that as is situation to together jointly make a translation of how are we going to change that way of working to a new way of working. Taking a holistic approach there is really, really important. And there we also see that, having expertise available to you to help you in making that translation is super important. And that's something that we can very well provide, that we focus on as well. Having advisory on a business from a business perspective is super important. And on top of that, we have a number of a nice collection or portfolio of implementation accelerators that will enable you to get started, to have a ready-to-use solution available as soon as possible, on which we can start to gradually build and grow. Things like standard assessment and maturity templates, compliance content pack with all of the relevant DORA controls that we can preload into the solution. We have standard roadmap initiatives, or let's say project management templates, things like that. Best practices, of course. So operating model examples, governance model examples, predefined process and working procedures, etc. And of course, a lot of training adoption packages. We have our dashboard and quick start user story packs. So a lot of things that really can help you to accelerate your program using, of course, all of the technological capabilities. Then last but not least, the implementation recommended approach, right? So I think step 1, as mentioned already 2 slides back, starting with an assessment of where you are, what your technology landscape looks like, what do you already have that we can start to leverage, where's the most pain to, from that initial readiness assessment, formulate a roadmap that is tailored to your needs. Assuming kind of like a greenfield approach, what we say is, if you assume that we're going to land the whole program onto ServiceNow, which of course brings in the end the most value because everything is connected, it is in a single platform, then the best practice approach would be to start with a certain sequence. But again, the output of the first step should really determine the additional steps. But all in all, a logical sequencing would be to start with CMDB, the foundation, having the IT asset landscape, ownership, etc. defined, integrated risk management to be able to start your risk assessments, your IT risk assessments with ServiceNow, and business continuity management for the BIAs, the recovery and the continuity runbooks, etc. After which we can introduce additional products like security operations for security incident response and reporting, third-party risk management, and of course IT service management for the ITIL best practices. And finally, with a combination of workflows, we realized that information sharing requirement. So, again, this is based on our experience, a best practice roadmap, but depending on the outcome of that first step, we would have probably a tailored approach that we formulate together with you that fits your needs. We have those steps mapped again onto the complete mapping. Thank you so much